Crash Bandicoot, my old friend. Crash Bandicoot is a platform video game franchise that was created and developed by Naughty Dog, originally created for the PlayStation Entertainment System. Crash Bandicoot was first shown off at E3 in 1996. Now, if you were born in the 90s, it is likely that the PlayStation 1 was your first PlayStation console. And if you did own the PlayStation 1, it is likely that one of the first games you owned for that console was Crash Bandicoot. But if you're new to the Crash Bandicoot franchise, you may not realize that Crash Bandicoot was one of the best platformers of an entire console generation. Well, that is until the first three Crash Bandicoot games were developed by Naughty Dog. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to describe the end of Naughty Dog's basement decade. The book goes on to state, "We hired a talented team, Dave Baguette, Bob Raffay, Taylor Kurosaki, Justin Manast, and Charlotte Francis, and the team set out to work on the game that would become Crash Bandicoot." The book goes on to state, Mark Cerny, their Universal producer, was instrumental in their success, and the book is just as much a tribute to him as it is to Naughty Dog. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to state, during the original PlayStation days, mascots dominated the industry, and we developed a surprise contender. Mario was still everyone's darling, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. PlayStation was looking for a new mascot, and our new character was a natural fit. We were battling with the icons of the industry with fewer than 10 people. Looking back on it, it's hard to believe that Crash Bandicoot got made in a small room on top of a parking lot building in the armpits of Universal Studios. The book goes on to state, the early discussion of Project Willy the Wombat, the production name we later thankfully changed to Crash Bandicoot, felt unbound. There were revolutionary plans to turn the camera found in a traditional side-scroller on its head and allow it to follow the character in 3D. Based on the Eastern Bandicoot, Crash represents a genetically modified version of this marsupial. Crash Bandicoot was originally called Willy the Wombat before the idea came along to change the name to Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot. The first Crash Bandicoot came out in 1996. Crash Bandicoot is a platform video game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony for the PlayStation. The game premises around the creation of the titular Crash, a Bandicoot who has been uplifted by mad scientist Dr. Neo Cortex. The story follows Crash as he aims to prevent Cortex's plans for world domination and rescue his girlfriend Tauna, a female Bandicoot also created by Cortex. The game is played from a third-person perspective in which the camera trails behind Crash through some levels that showcase forward-scrolling and side-scrolling perspectives. Now, as a kid, I played the hell out of the first Crash Bandicoot. I remember booting up the game and seeing the Naughty Dog logo, and as a kid, I didn't know what the hell a Bandicoot was, so when I saw the Naughty Dog logo, I assumed they were talking about Crash, and thus I thought the character was a dog. Needless to say, as a kid, I didn't know what the hell game development was, but to this day, the franchise still holds a very special place in my heart. Crash Bandicoot was a commercial success. In the United States, the game was the second highest renting PlayStation title at Blockbuster Video. The game eventually went on to sell over 6 million units, making it one of the best-selling PlayStation 1 games and the highest ranked on sales in the United States. Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. Just 1 year later, in October 1997, Naughty Dog would go on to release Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. Taking place on a fictional group of islands near Australia, Crash 2 follows our adventures of our anthropomorphic Bandicoot named Crash. Crash is abducted by series villain Dr. Neo Cortex, who tricks him into thinking he wants to save the world. Crash is then thrust into several parts of Insanity Island in order to gather crystals that will help Cortex contain the power of the up-and-coming planetary alignment. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back received positive reviews from critics and is widely considered to be superior to its predecessor. Much praise went to the game's graphics, controls, In music, while criticism focused on trial and error gameplay, the lack of level variety, easy boss levels, and lack of innovation as a platform video game. Despite that, the game went on to become one of the best-selling PlayStation video games of all times. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to state, by Crash 2, the character was ready for takeoff. A new game engine called Game-Oriented Object Lisp 2, or GOOL, was built that could handle twice the polygon count and ran 3 times faster. This meant the character will be reworked and progress along with the tech. The book goes on to state, Crash 2 introduced Crash's little sister Coco, and one of our finer moments of storytelling, the game's entire mission is to help her find a missing laptop battery. Crash Bandicoot. October 31st, 1998, just a year later, Naughty Dog would go on to release Crash Bandicoot 3, aka Crash Bandicoot Warped. The game's story takes place immediately after the events of the second. When the ruins of Dr. Neo Cortex's space station crash land on Earth, they unleash an evil entity known as Uka Uka, Aku Aku's evil twin brother, who joins with Cortex and the time-obsessed Dr. Nefarious Tropi as they plan to gather powerful crystals that lay scattered across time and use their energy to enslave Earth. The game's story follows main characters Crash and Coco Bandicoot as they travel through time to prevent the villains from gathering the crystals by collecting them themselves. Crash Bandicoot Warped was lauded by critics who noted the high quality in many areas, including gameplay, graphics, and audio, and the game has been considered one of the best video games of all time. It went on to sell nearly 6 million units, making it one of the best-selling video games for PlayStation, and in Japan, the game surpassed the sales of its 2 predecessors and became the first non-Japanese title to sell over 1 million copies in the country. A remastered version was included in the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy collection for PlayStation 4 in June 2017, and it was ported to other platforms in June 2018. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to state, Crash's development as a character was enhanced by various environments that went into making Crash Bandicoot 3. It was a game based on time travel, so there were many exotic options for the character. Coco Bandicoot and the time travel premises of Warp gave our artists free rein to get imaginative with the characters' designs as well as companions. Now Crash Bandicoot Warped holds a very special place in my heart. It was the first Crash Bandicoot game I could remember to have an actual endgame. Every time you beat a boss, you unlock new powers, with the last of the 2 being the best of the bunch, the bazooka and the running shoes. These 2 new powers added a whole new spectrum of replayability to the game. It was amazing to go through every level again and shoot every enemy with the bazooka, or to throw on the running shoes and run time trials and see how many gems you could accrue. I think it's fair to say that Crash Bandicoot Warped was one of the best platformers of an entire console generation. Crash Bandicoot Warped is also remembered very fondly by players because of that. CTR, Crash Team Racing. In 1999, one of the last Crash Bandicoot games Naughty Dog would go on to release was Crash Team Racing. Commonly referred to as CTR for short, Crash Team Racing is the first racing game in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Released on PlayStation in 1999, it was the 4th installment in the Crash Bandicoot series and the last one developed by Naughty Dog. In the game's story, an egotistical space alien by the name of Nitrous Oxide comes to Earth to challenge Crash Bandicoot as well as his friends and foes to a racing competition before facing off himself and threatening to turn the world into a concrete parking lot if he wins. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to state, a bit of a departure from Crash's normal adventures, but the perfect activity for a fun-loving Bandicoot. Crash Team Racing became a greatest hits title in 2000 in the US, a PlayStation Best in Japan, and a Platinum title in Europe. As we all know, racing games are kinda niche. Despite that, at the time, Crash Team Racing has sold 1.9 million units in the United States and over 300,000 units in Japan. As a result of its success, The game was re-released for Sony's Greatest Hits lineup in 2000 and for the Platinum range in January 12, 2001. At this point, guys, you're probably wondering, why did Naughty Dog stop developing Crash Bandicoot? To understand why Naughty Dog stopped developing Crash Bandicoot, you must understand who owns the IP that is Crash Bandicoot. Naughty Dog may have created the Crash Bandicoot franchise, but at the time the franchise was owned by Universal. During an interview looking back at the making of the Jak and Daxter series, developer Naughty Dog has revealed that it couldn't continue to make Crash Bandicoot games beyond Crash Team Racing because its relationship with then IP owner Universal Interactive had turned sour. Speaking to Games Radar co-founder Jason Rubin revealed that, having realized that it could no longer work with Universal, several Naughty Dog employees quietly began working on a new game engine, which went on to form the foundation of Jak and Daxter. Our relationship with Universal had gotten to a point where we couldn't continue to make Crash Bandicoot games, said Rubin. Although we love Crash Bandicoot and we love working with Sony, it didn't make any financial sense. Universal owned the IP, and there was a hostility there that was just brutal. Crash Bandicoot was originally produced by Universal Interactive, which later became Vivendi Games, which later became Activision following a merger in 2007. Following Naughty Dog's departure from the Crash Bandicoot franchise, a number of Crash Bandicoot games dropped that were developed by other studios but never saw the success of the first 3 games developed by Naughty Dog. There are over 24 games in the Crash Bandicoot franchise, but some of the more noteworthy ones in the main franchise are Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex is a 2001 platform game developed by Traveler's Tale and co-published by Konami and Universal Studios. The game's plot centers around the appearance of Crunch Bandicoot, a genetically advanced bandicoot created by a main antagonist of the series, Dr. Neo Cortex, who has harnessed the power of a group of destructive mass spirits known as the Elementals. Crash Bandicoot and his sister Coco must travel the world and gather special crystals that will return the Elementals to a hibernated state and thwart Cortex's plans to use Crunch as a weapon for world domination. Critical reception of the game was mixed, with many reviewers opinioning that the game recycled elements from the PlayStation predecessor with minimal innovation. Crash Twinsanity. Crash Twinsanity is a 2004 platform video game developed by Traveler's Tale and published by Vivendi and Universal Games. It is the 11th installment in the Crash Bandicoot series, and the 5th game in the main franchise. The game's story takes place 3 years after the events of Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex and follows the main protagonist and antagonist of the series, Crash Bandicoot and Dr. Neo Cortex, who must work together in order to stop an evil pair of interdimensional parrots from destroying Insanity Island. Crash Twinsanity received mixed reviews upon release. Critics praised the gameplay variety, visuals, humor, and Lang's voice acting, but had mixed reactions to the music and criticized the camera controls as well as the platforming sections. 2 mobile versions were subsequently released and were also met with mixed reception. Crash of the Titans. Crash of the Titans is a 2007 platform beat-em-up video game developed by Radical Entertainment and published by Vivendi Games. It was the first game in the Crash Bandicoot series not to have a Japanese release. It was the last game to be published by Vivendi before the merger with Activision the following year. Crash of the Titans is the 14th installment in the Crash Bandicoot video game series and the 6th game in the main franchise. The game's story centers around the discovery of a substance known as Mojo, which series antagonist Dr. Neo Cortex and his niece Nina harvest in order to turn the inhabitants of Wampa Islands into an army of ferocious mutants known as Titans. The protagonist of the series, Crash Bandicoot, must stop Cortex and Nina by using a technique known as jacking to take control of and destroy the Titans while collecting Mojo. He must also rescue his sister Coco, who has been kidnapped and forced to help build a doomsday machine that will assist the Titans in Cortex and Nina's bid for world domination. Crash of the Titans received mixed reviews upon release. Although the jacking mechanic, visuals, voice acting, and humor were praised, critics considered the combat to be repetitive and criticized the non-adjustable camera. Crash Mind Over Mutant. Crash Mind Over Mutant is a platform video game developed by Radical Entertainment. It was the second game in the series not to have a Japanese release after Crash of the Titans. It was the first game in the franchise to be published by Activision following a merger with the series' previous publisher Vivendi Games. It was the last major console industry as a whole for the Crash Bandicoot series until 2017's Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Crash Mind Over Mutant is the 15th installment in the Crash Bandicoot video game series and the 7th in the main game franchise. The game's story centers around the arrival of a popular technological device, a parody device such as iPhones and Blackberries that puts whoever uses it under the control of the device's creator, Dr. Neo Cortex and Dr. Nitrous Brio. Crash Bandicoot and Aku Aku must free his friends from the control of the device and put an end to Cortex's and Brio's plan. Crash Mind Over Mutant received overall mixed reviews with opinions varying from version to version, but this will be the last game in the franchise to release in almost 10 years until
It's Crash Bandicoot!
Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy is a 2017 platform video game developed by Vicarious Visions and published by Activision. It is a compilation of remasters of the first three games in the Crash Bandicoot series: Crash Bandicoot 1996, Crash Bandicoot Cortex Strikes Back 1997, and Crash Bandicoot Warp 1998, which were originally developed and published by Naughty Dog for PlayStation. Each game features Crash Bandicoot traversing various levels in order to stop Dr. Neo Cortex from taking over the world. Like in the original games, Crash uses jumping and spinning techniques in order to defeat enemies, smash crates, and collect items such as Wampa Fruits, Extra Life, and Protective Aku Aku Mask. The trilogy adds new features across all three games, including unifying checkpoints, pause menus, and save systems including both manual and automatic saving, time trials which were originally introduced in Warped, and the ability to play most levels as Crash's little sister Coco. It also features remastered audio and cutscenes, including new recordings from the game's more recent voice actor. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy received generally favorable reviews from critics across all platforms on which it was released. Critics praised multiple aspects such as upgraded graphics, unifying gameplay aspects, and overall faithfulness to the originals. Criticism of the game centered around aspects such as character controls and the original trilogy's pitfalls. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was a commercial success, selling over 2.5 million copies in its first 3 months of release, with that number increasing to 10 million by February 2019. In the United Kingdom, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was the best-selling game for 8 consecutive weeks since its initial release. The Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was also the second best-selling game in its first month in the United States. The Insane Trilogy won several awards, including Best Remake and Remaster, and it was also nominated for several more. It's crazy to think that the original 3 Crash Bandicoot games came out in the late 90s, yet out of all the Crash Bandicoot games to be released since then, these still rise above the fray as the best of the bunch. As a kid, I played a lot of the newer Crash Bandicoot games without even realizing that Naughty Dog wasn't developing them anymore, but I still subconsciously realized there was a drop in quality between these games and the original 3. Fortunately, the Insane Trilogy did so well, it seems that Activision decided to ride the wave of success with a new mainline entry, which brings us to Crash Bandicoot, It's About Time. Crash Bandicoot It's About Time is a 2020 platform video game developed by Toys for Bob and published by Activision. The game retains the series' core platforming gameplay and adds new elements through the use of the Quantum Mask, who can alter levels and provide new means to traverse or overcome obstacles. It also includes additional game modes for replaying levels and the ability to control 5 characters, 3 of whom, Cortex, Dingodile, and Tauna, have their own unique gameplay and levels. The development team intended for the game to be a direct continuation from the original trilogy in both narrative and gameplay, and created the Quantum Mask and additional playable characters after studying the series' mechanics and determining new fresh elements to add to the gameplay. The game was met with a positive critical reception, with praise going to the preservation and refinement of the series' classic formula, as well as the new implementation of gameplay mechanics. The controls, the amount of content, replay value, visuals, music, voice acting, and story were also commended. The physics, level design, and difficulty drew mixed reactions, and the rail grinding sections were heavily criticized. It was reported that commercially, the game had the highest first month's earning of a contemporary Crash Bandicoot title and topped sales charts in some territories and was nominated for 4 awards. But I'm not so sure about that first part because reportedly, the game only sold about 400k digitally in its first 2 months of release. And there were articles like this one at the time from GamesIndustry.biz that states, "It is unlikely Activision expected the new game to match the success of the more nostalgic remakes," which is just as well because Crash Bandicoot It's About Time's launch sales are 80% lower than that of the Insane Trilogy. Regardless of that, one thing I can tell you guys for certain is Crash Bandicoot It's About Time is a good game, and it's a worthy entry in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. And although I may not agree with the character changes they made to Tauna, I can positively say I am excited for the future of the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Anyway, guys, in conclusion, Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog LLC is an American first-party video game developer based in Santa Monica, California. Founded by Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin in 1984, the studio was acquired by Sony Computer Entertainment in 2001. Now, there is much criticism you can levy against Naughty Dog, but it can't be denied that even after their departure from the Crash Bandicoot franchise, Naughty Dog still manages to rise above and create some of the industry-leading games for the PlayStation ecosystem. Games like Jak and Daxter, The Last of Us, the Uncharted franchise, just to name a few. If Universal Studios didn't have such a brutal toxic relationship with Naughty Dog, who knows where the Crash Bandicoot franchise would be? Naughty Dog perfected the gameplay formula for Crash Bandicoot, and it's a formula that still holds up today, outselling all other Crash Bandicoot games in the franchise that were developed by other studios. This is true so much so that even 20 years later, new Crash Bandicoot games cannot even touch the Insane Trilogy, which was remastered by Toys for Bob but originally developed and created by Naughty Dog. In The Art of Naughty Dog, the book goes on to state, after shipping Crash Team Racing, the company took a well-deserved break for the whole month of December 1999. When we returned, it was a new century and we faced a new daunting task, developing the next big IP for PlayStation. It was a scary and exciting time. How do you top Crash Bandicoot, a franchise universally loved and universally popular to the tune of millions of units worldwide? We had to throw out all the stylistic habits of the past few years and develop something new. There was a lot of anxiety about whether it would stack up. A lot of people outside the company wondered, why not just do another Crash Bandicoot for the next-gen system? But Universal maintained partial control of the Crash Bandicoot franchise, and in the three-way marriage between them, PlayStation, and Naughty Dog, we couldn't find a workable solution to make it happen. We were used to making the unofficial PlayStation mascot, and we wanted to continue to occupy that niche for the PlayStation 2. I think it's fair to say that Naughty Dog is one of the best PlayStation studios of all time, and I look forward to the new games and the success of this studio moving forward. Anyway guys, if you made it this far in the video, please like the video if you like it, leave a dislike if you didn't so I know to do better next time. I really appreciate you guys tuning in for this long. I am a one-man team, so it usually takes me a while to edit these and get it to a point where I feel it's presentable. So if you made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.